Hi, I'm Jamie deRoy, and today I have the privilege of interviewing Ted Chapin, the producer of the Lyrics and Lyricists series at the 92nd Street Y. Well, welcome, Ted Chapin. It is a delight to be with you.
Always a pleasure.
Thank you. And the season, which I just witnessed, the Santino Fontana Evening of Rodgers and Hart, which was delightful.
Oh, thanks.
And the season is shaping up beautifully. So you have a Sammy Davis Jr. night.
Comes next. The job number one for a producer is to figure out what it is you're going to do. And in the case of Lyrics and Lyricists, where we have 5 different episodes or selections every year, part of the fun is to figure out, okay, what is, as you know from your producing background, what does that feel right? Does that feel interesting? So the idea, the Sammy Davis Jr., which is next, the idea came up talking with Larry Maslon, who has co-produced and co-written an extraordinary documentary about Sammy Davis Jr.
Oh,
that
wow.
will be aired on PBS, actually the week that we're doing the Lyrics and Lyricists. So I said to the marketing department, synergy, cross-promotion, we're doing something very different than the documentary, but it's complementary. And let's do it. Let's figure out a way to salute Sammy Davis Jr., not impersonate him,
right,
but celebrate the songs that were the tent poles of his career. And so that's what we're doing. And I think it's going to be fascinating, actually.
So what are some of the songs that you're going to be doing?
When you do anything Sammy Davis Jr., you have to do I Gotta Be Me.
Which I agree with.
You have to do The Candyman.
Uh-huh.
You have to do Mr. Bojangles.
Right.
And you have to do whichever the Anthony Newley, I keep getting them confused.
For Once in My Life?
Who Can I Turn To? Who Can I Turn To? So we knew we needed to do those. But also, Sammy Davis Jr. never went to school. He started to tap dance when he was 3 years old.
Wow.
And so it is a life in show business from beginning to end. And so as we sort of go through what the periods of his life were, when, as a young hoofer, we have Jared Grimes, who will do some hoofing for us. Thank you very much. Then sort of the middle, the Rat Pack years and Vegas years. And then the one that interests me the most, the part of Sammy Davis that interests me the most is Golden Boy, the musical. What I saw it several times, and I said to Larry at one point, can we kind of base our Lyrics and Lyricists around Golden Boy, and then sort of look forward and look back, because I remember Golden Boy. So we've done that, and the little thing that I have said, and I'm very excited about, is one day, I don't know if you remember, but in the Golden Boy set in 1965, I'm dating myself, but I don't mind, there were projections. And what I remember about the projections is sometimes they were projected positive and sometimes negative, the same image.
Right.
So one day I emailed Richard Pilbrow, credited with those projections, and I said, by the way, do you have them hanging around anywhere? He said, my task was to figure out how to put them on the back wall. They were all designed by Tony Walton.
Wow.
He looped me in. Tony Walton sent me all of them. So they will be part of the evening is the Lyrics and Lyricists audience will see what projections looked like on Broadway 55 years ago.
Wow, and that is going to take place on February 23rd, 24th, and 25th.
Absolutely.
So that sounds
we go into rehearsal
pretty
like
fabulous.
Tomorrow.
Oh, wow.
But it'll be fun. And part of what I love about Lyrics and Lyricists is the audience wants to learn things. They want songs performed well. They like songs they know, but they want them performed well, and they want to learn things. And it's one of the things I've learned now that this is my second season as producing, is to say to the artists who are going to participate in this, that the lecture demo part of Lyrics and Lyricists is your friend. We don't have to figure out how to motivate information to get across to an audience. As you know, the bane of every theater piece's existence. How do you give the audience the information so that they can accept the dramatic things that are going on? I say to everybody, you go to a music stand, you open a book, you read what's there. And to me, it's also good because that makes it easier for performers.
Well, they don't have to memorize all
Right.
this, and then, yeah.
Learn the songs, stage the songs, figure out what's going on in the lyric. But when you get to telling things, you can actually take a card or things. And
Yeah.
it's been fun because the narrative is important, but because it is Lyrics and Lyricists and we only have a week rehearsal, we have to ask humane things of our artists.
And Lyrics and Lyricists have kind of morphed over the years, because in the early days it was really the lyricist.
Yes, exactly. I mean, it's funny because we had a little mini retreat several years ago before I took over as producer, and one of the things that was on the list was, should we change the name, because it has morphed into sort of interesting examinations of the American songbook, not losing sight of the lyrics, but nonetheless. And actually, it was Bill Charlap, who does Jazz in July, who was part of this thing, and he looked and said, "That's your brand. No, don't change that at all."
Oh, I agree. I don't think it should be changed. And it doesn't bother me that it might focus sometimes on a performer like the Bobby Darin show was amazing.
Right, and of course Bobby Darin was a songwriter, so he did write lyrics. So I like to make certain that there's a little something in there. But also, I do hope in future years that I will be able to invite living lyricists to be part of the Lyrics and Lyricists program, because I think it's important to keep that going, and how to structure an evening around them. The Lynn Ahrens one that we did last year.
Oh, that was fabulous.
It was great. It was remarkable. There were some people at the Y who didn't know who she was.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah, and so that's part of the tradition, and the loyal audience who, we taught them who Lynn was, and they were very pleased. They walked out very happy, even if they walked in thinking, "I'm not sure what this is."
Well, Lynn Ahrens and Stephen Flaherty were represented on Broadway with two things: with Once on This Island, which won the Best Revival, and also with Anastasia. And in the fall, they're going to do like not a revival, but just a big concert of with some of the original cast from Ragtime, which is going to be quite exciting.
I heard about that.
The Actors Fund is it benefits the Actors Fund.
No, that's great. No, and they're great. I mean, they are loyal and consistent Broadway composer lyricists. And I think Lyrics and Lyricists has to keep an ear to the ground of today.
Oh, I totally agree, because otherwise we're just going to be, just in a treadmill of standing still.
And I have to say, I'm very pleased that I feel I have the support from the Y to push it a little bit. They want their loyal audience to be satisfied, but at the same time, no one has ever said to me, "You can't do that, you can't do that." So it's a good collaboration, and we argue about things from time to time.
Well, any good collaboration has an argument.
And it's interesting because the Oklahoma one that we're doing, which is later on this season, it was decided long before the St. Anne's production of Oklahoma was scheduled to come to Broadway. So basically, the idea that I had of how to do it was thrown out the window, because now we had to rethink, given the fact that we will be doing it the weekend 2 weeks after it opens, and it's the weekend before the Tony nominations.
Oh, wow. And it'll open at Circle in the Square.
At Circle in the Square, in April. So we're rejigging what that Oklahoma one is all about.
To me, you can't get enough of the score of Oklahoma.
And I also have some fun things, because I still, and I don't know exactly how we'll do this, but the part of the beginning, I very much want to talk about just where Richard Rodgers and Oscar Hammerstein actually were before they sat down to write Oklahoma. I mean, the story is oft told. Rodgers was concerned about Loren's heart. Hammerstein had a series of flops. The Theater Guild asked them to do this show. It was hard to put on, and bingo, it became Oklahoma. But I wanted, and actually Andy Einhorn, my comrade in arms in this, he's the one who said, what was actually going on with those two guys? Were they depressed? Were they sold? I mean, what if we could figure out? And actually, we've discovered some very interesting things in Oscar Hammerstein letters. So we'll give a little bit of an insight, so that the notion that Oklahoma sprung out of nothing will be somewhat quelled. And also, one of the things I think will be funny is when you look at pictures of the original Oklahoma, it sort of looks to us today like a high school production.
Uh-huh.
Well, it's because the $100,000 budget couldn't be raised, and they had to cut the budget down to $60,000.
Wow.
So they had no money for scenery. So that's part of why it looks like that. But I always like putting those kind of pieces together of information that also. The Y audience is great with it. They do size very well.
Uh-huh.
Oh, I didn't know that.
But I think it's wonderful that in theater that sometimes less is more, and so certainly it was the score and the story
Right.
in Oklahoma that drove it.
There's also a song which I hope we will do. I think we will do that. I don't want to tell the audience who wrote it, but there's a list. The woman at the Theater Guild had a list of potential writers for the musical of Green Grow the Lilacs that includes Woody Guthrie and Kurt Weill. And then I want us to do a song a list of a team that was not on that list at all. And it turns out to be a song written in Columbia University by Oscar Hammerstein and Richard Rodgers. And it's not a song that would make you think they're the right ones for Oklahoma, shall we put it that way. But I think the audience will get a kick out of it.
And that's kind of how they got the job?
No. They'd done that 20 years earlier. No, it was actually...
How funny.
It was Teresa Helburn at the Guild who offered the job to Richard Rodgers and for Rodgers and Hart. And it was Rodgers who had a sense that he wanted to work with Oscar Hammerstein as a librettist. And so at first, it actually was Rodgers, Hart, and Hammerstein. Longer, as I've discovered, than we knew.
Wow.
So anyway, those are the little tidbits that'll hopefully make the Oklahoma thing good and some great performances.
And then in between these two is,
Sondheim.
the king, our king, he's a...
Well, yes, we're calling it Sondheim Wordplay. And again, the basis of this is I was at a competition, the Kurt Weill Foundation has a competition, and some guy came out and sang In Praise of Women from A Little Night Music. She wouldn't, therefore she couldn't, and I sat there thinking to myself, nobody has had as much fun with the English language as Stephen Sondheim as a lyricist. So I sat there in this auditorium at the Eastman School of Music, pulled out a piece of paper, and I started to think about songs written by Steve Sondheim that are fun, that are just fun and spirited and amazing use of language, tongue twisters and things like that. And then I thought, but there's also Losing My Mind, which is the most efficient use of language. And also, I'm not sure everybody realizes, unless of course the way you sing it in cabaret, that it goes through the day. Mm-hmm. That it starts in the morning, and goes right through the day. So anyway, we're examining those kinds of things. But as I said to Sondheim when I met with him a while back, my notion is the audience will sit down, we will begin, they will have a smile on their face, and they will keep that smile on their face from beginning to end. There are some wonderful reviews of Steve Sondheim's work, and it is endless layers that you can find in Sondheim. I want to entertain. I want to have a good time.
Well, that's great. I used to do a parody of I Never Do Anything Twice to I Never Wear Anything Twice.
Oh, I like that. Did he know about it?
I don't know.
He's interesting. I will say this about Stephen Sondheim. I know of no other artist who is not only around for reassessments of his work, but participates, is open, is really having a wonderful time. Who would ever have thought that we'd be seeing the, fourth production of Merrily We Roll Along being done in New York?
Exactly.
A show that ran 2 weeks and was an utter flop. Luckily, RCA Victor made a recording, but that show has been rethought and reconceived and redone, and it's now part of the standard repertoire. And he's there encouraging it. I was told that the Fiasco Theater Company that's playing, just previewing now, that he was there, he's been there 2 or 3 times.
Oh, that's great.
They
also did that wonderful production of Into the Woods.
Absolutely. But again, those are productions that for a theater artist not to control the way everything is done, but quite to the contrary, is open to good ideas. What he doesn't like are surprises. Mm-hmm. Tell him. He's great, but if you didn't tell him and he finds something out that displeases him, he gets displeased.
Well, I did another parody of his. I didn't write it. Bob Ost wrote it, and I think Bob Ost had sent it to him and got a very sweet note back. It was, send in the clowns, take off my gown. And he said, wrote him back and said how clever it was, so I felt a little better, but I did try to sing it. I started to sing it at Arlene Dahl's party many, many years ago, and Elaine Stritch stopped me and said he wouldn't like that.
Well, maybe he wouldn't like it if Elaine did it. No, but he's a theater animal. I mean, that's what's so amazing. I mean, he's in this position, this sort of austere position of respect, which is wonderful. He's working on a new show. He's 88 years old, I think.
Wow.
And yet, he is so aware of the impact that he's had on all of our lives. And he's very, again, as I say, he's reasonable. If he doesn't like something, you'll hear it. You'll hear about it. But he's much more flexible than I think people think his reputation would lend you to believe.
Well, that's good. That's nice to hear.
Yeah. And it's funny because one lyric that I hope we will include that I heard this actually was on an album of him singing his own songs, and it's a song that was the original opening of A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Forum, and called "Love Is in the Air." But the lyrics that he sings on this, which I don't think are even in his lyric books, is "Wives are in their husbands' service, virgins are distinctly nervous. Love is around." And I thought, you know what? If the Y audience hears that, they're going to think, okay, I now know what I'm into. But here's a funny thing that I've found out. That song, Love Is in the Air, is the first song that he sang when he did his Lyrics and Lyricists in 1971. And it was the first song on the program that Kathleen Marshall did about shit songs cut out of town. So it's like, I guess everybody is attracted to that song. So we may end up not using it as the opening of ours.
I think that he did at a special, it was a Young Playwrights gala, where he got up and he did Marry Me a Little, and then he brought on someone to do the reworked version, which of course was...
Being Alive.
Yeah.
Being Alive. It's fascinating. Another thing that I would like to do, in his books are wonderful parody songs that he wrote. And there's one that he wrote for Leonard Bernstein on one of his birthdays to the tune of Poor Jenny from Lady in the Dark. Poor Jenny, the girl who couldn't make up her mind.
Oh, yes.
About poor Lenny. And I just think the Y audience would get a kick. They know the song, and the lyrics are extremely witty and extremely funny.
I love it when a writer parodies his own songs.
I'll tell you, I'm up for it. So we're having fun with that one.
So and then what is the last one in
the
this
last
season?
one we are calling Live in Living Color, and it's basically songs that come from television. And Mo Rocca of CBS Sunday
I love
Morning,
Mo Rocca.
he will be the host of it. So that gives us a little TV cred, we hope. But the idea of it, it's interesting. Sarah Lukinson, who used to create those extraordinary films in the Kennedy Center honors of days gone by, is writing it. Chase Brock is directing it, and Rob Berman is, it's come together between the three of them. And Sarah said something in an email to me about television, and that television used to be home base. And she and I talked about it, and I thought that's really interesting because it was, we all at a time sat together, in our homes and watched the moon landing. Right. We watched things communally, and that's not what television is anymore. But in those days,
right.
A lot of Broadway people wrote for television.
Right.
Sesame Street has some great songs. There are songs that people don't realize, like Love and Marriage, that was written for a television production of Our Town.
Oh, wow, I didn't realize that.
The Steve Allen song, This Could Be the Start of Something Great.
Something big.
Something big, rather. Yeah, thank you for the correction. So what we're finding is like the onion. We're just peeling layers and finding all these wonderful things so that there can still be the basis of the songs that make up lyrics and lyricists, but also some commentary and some things about what television meant to us. So I think it's going to be fun.
Well, I mean, of course, television has changed so much. It was Sunday night, you watched Ed Sullivan, everybody was home to do that. Now, if there's something on television, you're not going to be home, you DVR it, you can watch it whenever you want. Or they have it on demand. Or, sometimes I kill myself to watch something at 8, and then it ends and it starts again at 10.
Right,
and
right.
I'm like, I could have gone out.
And it's funny because we had a very good conversation in which we all agreed, those of us who are putting it on, we don't mind actually being a little nostalgic about what television was, because it's very different today. Although there's a interesting kind of renaissance if you expand to the cables and Netflix and stuff like that. But we want to focus because, frankly, that's when the good songs came.
Right.
From the time when it was more of a communal event.
And what was so great in the old days, of course, is that people got onto these variety shows and talk shows and sang from Broadway shows. Occasionally it happens now, but not to the degree it did then.
Were you at our meeting this morning? You're like hitting everything we talked about, which I think is just great. Yeah, no, absolutely. And we had a funny thing about, come to the supermarket in Old Peking, which is in Aladdin. And one of the things I told these guys is that in the recording that I have, the audio recording of Cole Porter's Aladdin, it starts with Cole Porter saying, I had this wonderful opportunity to write for this new medium. So we were talking about whether we might use that before a little segment about Broadway people who wrote specifically for television.
Right.
So part of the fun to me producing these things is, you just toss all these ideas out, and you have to shape an evening, but there's no formula that we're going to be exactly, we're not going to follow a formula. We do like a first act and a second act, and we also like it to be about 45 to 50 minutes first act and about a 40-minute second act. That's the producer in me says,
your audience.
Well, and also, frankly, as I said to people, have you ever been to something and said, gee, that was too short?
No, nobody's ever said that.
No, I don't. And it's funny because last year David Loud did a wonderfully heartfelt, because he's a very emotionally connected guy, about Frank Lesser. And there were things, it went on longer than the ideal, but what was contained in it and what he had to say about it was so interesting that, again, I, as the producer, said, I'm not gonna push this one. Everybody's gonna have to pay a little bit of attention, because what's being said and what's being illustrated is really important. And actually what came out of it is hopefully a good one for next season. So
that's great.
Again, because it's interesting that I respect and like the people who have been around lyrics and lyricists for years, but at the same time, I like introducing new people to it. Lily Cooper from the last one.
Yes, and
Lily Cooper had done it before, and Harada had done it before. Santina Fontana had never done it. Gina Rattan, our director, had never done it. Vishal had never done it. Jessica Fontana had never done it. So it's that sort of line between, it's not rocket science, but here's what it is, and here's what it isn't. Don't try to make it what it isn't. Focus on what it is and can be, and then let's push it. Let's push. And also, I have to say, the people at the Y, from the stage crew to the support people, everybody, I feel, is just sort of jazzed by what's going on. They like the new energy to lyrics and lyricists.
Well, and all the new projections, and they're so fantastic.
The projections, I have to say, it was Alex Timbers who brought this wonderful guy, Dan Scully, to us for the Bobby Darin thing last year. And I was so blown away by what he did, because as you saw, it's if there needs to be the cover of Time magazine, then he knows how to put the cover of Time magazine on in a very discreet, elegant way, and then get rid of it when the narrative is moved on. But more importantly, he'll listen to the songs, he'll listen to the arrangements, and he'll just figure out, that feels like a smoky photograph of a woman in a white fur on a street with a car in the background. So it always paralleling what the song is, never taking away from it.
Right.
So I've tapped him to do as many as he can this season, and he's a joy to work with.
Oh, that's
I told
great.
him that for the Rodgers and Hart one, somebody congratulated me on the set. So I said to Dan, you got a really nice compliment about the set, which doesn't exist.
Right.
It's
all projections. But it's been very exciting, and I'm assuming that because your career has been so amazing. Starting with Trailing in Follies when you were quite young, and then writing a book about it years later. Tell us about some of your background, because it's so fascinating, and your father was a fascinating man, and I know one of your brothers.
Yes, you do. Yes, you do. Well, as you know, and as I assume people who are watching this know, if you're interested in the arts and the performing arts, I mean, you're the exception because you both perform, but also understand being a producer and being behind it. But there are all kinds of things that you can do if you are interested in it and are curious enough to know what are these jobs and what are they, what have they been. I always liked the theater. I didn't want to be a performer. I didn't know what I wanted to be, but there were opportunities because my father, Schuyler, was involved with a lot of different things. So I was taken to things and realized early on that I could gopher on shows, get coffee. But because, thank you, Lin-Manuel, it made me in the room where it happened. That's what I realized I wanted to be. And so one thing led to the other. And interestingly, when I worked for Alan Arkin, I was his assistant when he directed the original production of The Sunshine Boys.
Wow.
Yep, great experience.
Oh, my goodness.
Neil Simon at the top of his game. I mean, these kind of experiences, as you know, you have these experiences, and while you may not realize at the time just how extraordinary they are, as long as you take them in, they will come back. I have my script of The Sunshine Boys, out of town into New York with all the changes that were made in it. And what's amazing is there's nothing cut from The Sunshine Boys that is less good than what's there. It's just too much. And he knew to get the ba-dum laugh, this line wasn't needed. So he took that kind of stuff.
Right.
So it's great. Anyway, when I worked for Alan Arkin, we produced a show. So I was a producer, and we closed in Boston. It was a failure. And so...
The Sunshine Boys?
No, this is another show.
Oh, this other show.
Sunshine Boys, it was fine.
Because that was,
working
to me,
with
a huge success.
My clumsy segue was working with Alan Arkin on the Sunshine Boys. No, because I left out a piece. Alan Arkin then asked me to continue working with him.
Oh, I see. Okay.
For whatever he was doing, and we actually took over the Kay Ballard musical Molly, which reminded when Kay Ballard died a few weeks ago. It reminded me of that. But then we produced a show. He said he wanted to produce and have a production company. So he found a show. I had to raise money for it. It was a 1-set, 8-character comedy called The Soft Touch. It was to be the first season of that year, whatever it was. And we closed in Boston in 2 weeks. It was not the happiest time of my life, but I will say this, and I've said this before, it was not only not the happiest, Alan fired me in the middle of it. So I was out of a job, nothing ahead of me. In retrospect, it was an incredibly valuable and important year of my life to try to start over, in essence, and figure out what I wanted to do and what was available for me to do. And that just sort of led to the career that I've ended up having, including producing at the Musical Theater Lab. And then when Rodgers and Hammerstein, one of my favorite parts of my resume is that I was the musical director of the National Theater of the Deaf. This was before Spring Awakening, and we did Four Saints in 3 acts by Virgil Thompson and Gertrude Stein, an American opera that makes no sense to the hearing. And you can only imagine how we confounded the deaf audiences coast to coast.
And sign language is different.
And as I say, I play the piano as well as they sing. But anyway, to have been close to producing my whole career and now being given this opportunity at Lyrics and Lyricists to be the named producer, it's a lot of fun.
Wow. Well, we wish you so much success with this new season, which is already underway. Yep. And it's every show has been really great. I might have to readjust my plans so I can make it to this next performance, because it does fall over the Oscar weekend.
Oh, okay.
But I will figure it all out.
Okay. Listen, it's always a pleasure to talk to you. You're such a wonderful spirit in our world. And I appreciate
aren't you
that.
sweet? Thank you. Well, I always thought if there was a job for audience member, I would have gotten it. A good audience member. I could go out and do.
You are
See every night and sometimes twice.
You're the best, and people, I think, if I may say to people of a younger generation or 2 younger generations to you and I, they need to understand that nothing comes their way. You got to earn it. And you've got to go out every night and see things. You know, you can't just wait home. And I say that only because I think there's an element of that you know, we need to keep saying to the younger generations, you know, welcome to our world, work, but you got to work hard, and you just got to keep going and keep your imagination open. I mean, I have had a job for 35 years that didn't exist. And if somebody had said, what do I want to do in life? Run Rodgers and Hammerstein didn't make any sense, didn't exist. It's existed, and it's been great.
And you've done a great job.
Oh, it's been fun.
But I remember, you know, being offered the job when I went to California. It was very little money to open for Joan Rivers. I just split it with the piano player. And I said to this agent, lose money probably.
Right.
He said, well, you're not going to get discovered sitting at home.
Right.
You take it, you do it.
Right,
And
exactly.
it was so great, so much fun. And, you know, in this business, money is not always the,
Right.
you know, the fire under anybody's, you know, to get out and become what we end up all doing.
But I love the fact that in this day and age, when there are a lot of names above the title on Broadway shows, partly because they cost so much, but your name is there so consistently on high quality things.
Thank you.
And you know, it's like, oh, Jamie's in, got to be good.
Well, we were very lucky to get to do Cinderella, Rodgers and Hammerstein's Cinderella together, which is Santino Fontana was in that.
And it's a tour that will not stop. It's
Well,
still
we
out
like
on tour.
that.
Absolutely, absolutely. No, it was great. It gave people. Turns out that Cinderella gave people what they wanted, which was something known and familiar, but in new clothing,
Right.
In a new wraparound, and it worked. It worked.
Well, thank you once again, Ted
Listen,
Chapin. It's
my
always
pleasure.
a delight.
Anytime.
Always a delight.